All right, we are going to talk about macOS Monterey and some of the great enterprise management updates that have come since then. All right, so first off, we want to talk about what's here. So some small things, some system extension improvements. If you've ever run into this problem with system or kernel extensions, if you install the MDM profile to approve the kernel extension, if it's already pending, meaning you installed the software first, now it will be automatically approved. So you no longer have to restart the computer for that to happen. There's also ability to remove system extensions via MDM, even if it is installed by a user. So another great feature. We also have Mac sharing mode. This basically replaces target disk mode with what I would say is probably some less functionality, but I don't think we were expecting it to have more functionality than target disk mode. Target disk mode, if you've never used it before, was when you held down Command T when you restarted it. It was basically a way to image a computer or grab all the content from a computer on like a USB drive. So what this actually does is it uses the SMB protocol. It also requires user authentication. So if you don't have the user's credentials for that computer, if you don't have any admin credentials, you're not going to be able to get into it. It also doesn't work with ASR, which was a cool command line tool that you could use to do some like automated stuff. I remember when I was at Jamf, there was one guy who would set up all the training laptops with this workflow where he'd boot into a specific partition. It would run this ASR script and image the computer. Unfortunately, that doesn't work anymore, which isn't surprising at all. Username and password are now on the FileVault screen. This is cool if you've ever, so a lot of people for security don't want to show all the users that are on a computer. Instead, they just want to show a name and a password field. That worked at the login screen, but anytime you went to the FileVault screen, it would show the bubbles of all the different users that were FileVault enabled users. Now you can just show the name and the password, and no one knows what users are on that computer. It's also cool if you have a backdoor admin account and you want that to actually remain hidden. Because if it's a FileVault 2 enabled user that you can unlock the computer with, there was no way to hide it because it would show up on one of those bubbles. Another, I guess, kind of cool thing is instead of entering your password in wrong 3 times to get to the recovery key, you can press Option Shift Return, and then the recovery key window will pop up, which I guess is a little bit better than trying to direct users to enter their password in wrong 3 times and for that recovery key to come up. However, you're going to have users get confused what the option key is because for some reason, no one seems to know what that is. And now we probably come to the biggest part of this presentation, which is the new Erase All Contents and Settings feature. So now from a booted up Mac through the home screen, you're able to go into System Preferences and erase all contents and settings in a way that's similar to iOS. Now you might look at this at first glance and think, all right, well, I can just boot it into recovery mode, erase the Mac and start that way. But this has a bit more functionality. So the biggest thing about this is it doesn't need a full macOS install. So what does that mean? It is a lot quicker because it's not actually wiping the whole partition. It's just wiping away all the data. This is something that I think most of us were seeing after APFS came out because they talked about snapshots and all those different things, but now that's finally here and it is much quicker. It works for M1 and T2. It erases all the partitions, so that's something to keep in mind. If you have a computer with multiple partitions, it will erase all of them. It also, I don't have this here, but it only works on the primary boot partition. So if you boot into a secondary partition, it's not going to work on that, and it will do the old type of restore, which kind of wipes away the whole OS. It resets all the security settings on the M1 computers. So if someone had booted into recovery mode and changed some of the core security settings for macOS, it'll reset them back to the default. which honestly, in my opinion, is probably a really good thing because I like to keep those things in place. And then for it to work actually with a T2 chip, it must be in full security mode. So if it doesn't, it'll revert to the old method of wiping the entire OS. Firmware password must be cleared for this to work. So if the user set their own firmware password, it's not going to work unless they clear it. If you did this via MDM, you need to clear that firmware password before you can have a user go through this method, or send it via MDM, because you can actually send this via an MDM command as well. And the cool thing about this is it's the same MDM command that was used before. So it's for instance, I was testing this on an earlier version of Jamf 10.32, and it worked doing this, even though that this feature hadn't been out yet. So it's using that same MDM command to set that. You are going to need a bootstrap token though. And Hugo talked a little bit about this in his presentation about updating macOS. But yeah, you'll need a bootstrap token in place in order to wipe it via MDM. If the user does it themselves, they won't need to do it. And if any of these requirements aren't met, it'll just do a full reinstall of macOS. So it will still work, but it will completely wipe away the macOS operating system, and you'll have to reinstall it, which, depending on internet, takes anywhere from probably 30 minutes to an hour in order to do. I want to give you an example of what this looks like. And I will say, I did this in not the best way because it was the way I could do it. But I just set up my phone on the computer. If you see any reflections in there of someone in a bathrobe, you're just seeing things. It's not real. So you go to System Preferences, you pull up Erase All Contents and Settings. The user has to enter their password. You click Continue, and then it erases. It does show them that this is erasing everything. I have a timer in the upper left because obviously I'm speeding this up, or this would take the whole presentation. Now, the thing I will mention here is you have to activate the Mac before this happens. So the user has to interact with the Mac again, but then in a matter of less than 4 minutes, we got back to the hello screen and we're ready to set up macOS. If you have ever done this process before, you'll know it takes 30 minutes to an hour. This is not a quick process. So this is super cool that this is in place now. Now, when Apple was talking about this, they kind of raved about this in conjunction with the Auto Advance feature. And if you don't know what the Auto Advance feature is, it's through a pre-stage enrollment. You're able to click a box that says automatically advance through Setup Assistant. And if the computer is connected through Ethernet, it'll automatically go through that pre-stage enrollment and even potentially set up a user account for you. So I'm going to show you what that looks like with Auto Advance. I'll go through this first part very quickly because you already saw it. Now it gets back to the screen, and the thing here, and I waited for a while, it will not move past this screen until someone interacts with it. So someone would have to wait a couple minutes, then interact with it again before it's going to go through the Auto Advance thing. Then it gets to the LLO screen, and then Auto Advance will take over. At this point, I'm not interacting with it. It's just going through the Setup Assistant.
I really thought that you were joking about the bathrobe.
Oh, no. And
it was a very real thing that happened. Okay, well, I'll take this opportunity to apologize to everybody that's on this Mac admin meetup on behalf of Rocket Man.
We're professionals here. So, so the Auto Advance feature is really cool, but if you have a tech working on it, they're going to need to go through those first steps of erasing all contents and settings, wait about 2 to 3 minutes for the computer to restart, and then activate it again, which takes about a minute before it's going to go through the rest of the process and set up the Mac. Still a lot better than the workflow we had before. still really not even close to the workflows we had with imaging back in the day, especially if you're using something like Deploy Studio and a NetBoot server. But one of the really cool things about this too is you can use a remote wipe command to set this off, which even automates it one step further. So if you watch here, I'm setting this command right about now. And just like any other MDM command, this goes pretty quickly. So now it's wiped. And again, I have to interact with this screen to activate macOS. So even though I can send this remote wipe command, someone is going to have to go through on this computer and set that stuff up. Again, it's going to get back to this setup assistant. And if you have auto advanced setup, it'll go through the rest of that automatically. So we're getting close. If that one piece was automated and it was all this quick, this would be amazing. With that one piece that's not automated, it's still really cool, but not as cool as I think all of us were hoping for. So that's probably the biggest thing I want to talk about, but there are a couple other things that I want to mention too with Monterey. This is also a really cool thing. We can do major upgrades by MDM command. So in the past, what we've always done is uploaded the macOS installer, which right now is like 12 gigabytes. So we have to upload that into our Jamf server, and then we have to send a policy to install it. You would oftentimes cache it on the computer, and you would use the startOS command. But now we can just do it through an MDM command. We can just say, hey, upgrade the OS, and it will do a major upgrade. So this came with 11.5. So I haven't tested this out yet to see what the caveats are. And we'll talk a little bit more later about some of the things with upgrading macOS as well and what's coming. And yeah, like I said, startOS install also still works. So if you prefer to use that method for a number of reasons, one of them being you can control the deferrals more, you can still use the old method. And now I get to the next session of this presentation, which is what's not in Monterey that we were maybe expecting yet. So the biggest thing, and this is actually in Monterey already, or at least according to Apple it is, but this hasn't been added to Jamf. And this is probably the biggest feature I was hoping for. If you heard Hugo's presentation a couple months ago, this is probably the coolest thing. So it's managed software updates, and it's allowing us to utilize MDM to do all the things that we've been doing before. And I'll kind of get into this, but Jamf says, or this is a Jamf Nation post by the product owner for this specific thing. And they're saying they're expecting it between Q4 of 2021 and Q1 of 2022. So it's going to be coming soon. It's not here yet. So why is this cool? Well, it offers a lot more functionality than before. Basically, right now, we have one button that says Update macOS. And what it does is you click it, the computer sees nothing on the screen. It takes about 5 minutes, maybe between 5 and 20 minutes. It's got to download some stuff. And then it will just restart without even notifying the user. So not an ideal situation. And what it's actually doing is using the, I believe the install ASAP command. So as long as no applications are blocking it, it'll restart. But now they have all these different ways that you can do it. You can download the updates only. You can notify the user of the updates. You can also install forced restart. That might be the command they were using before. You can also install later, which is a really cool thing, which wasn't there before, where you can install it at a later date. But this is the coolest one, which is the max deferrals, because a lot of times when you're doing macOS updates, you want to use all of these in conjunction. So most of the time, what we do is we'll deploy the update and we'll allow people to defer it 3 times for 24 hours. So the first time they can say, hey, I'm busy now. The second time they can say, hey, I'm busy now again. And the third time it's going to say, sorry, out of luck. you got to restart now, but you've been warned 3 times. So that's something that theoretically we're going to be able to do in Monterey. And this is kind of what it looks like. They'll get something like this that will say something like that. However, because this isn't baked into Jamf yet, we're not able to see what it looks like. Luckily though, the software update tool still works. If you don't know what that is, that's a binary you can use to download and install the latest updates. I will say this works, but I'm pretty sure I'm not wrong about this. This doesn't work on M1 computers, so it really only works for the older computers with the T2 chip or older than that as well. But this tool does still work, and it is still a valid solution. With the M1 Macs, we would also use the StartOS install by downloading the full installer onto the computer, which is a little annoying to do when you're just doing a minor update, right? Because then we have to download 12 gigabytes of data onto the computer just to do an upgrade that should only be at like 1 or 2 gigabytes. So we'll definitely be showing this when it comes out and when we can actually test it with an MDM, but currently it's not supported by Jamf. Another thing that is not available is Apple Configurator 2 for iOS. So this is something that I've heard a lot of buzz about. They said that Apple Configurator is coming to the iPads. It's not here yet though. I don't see it on the App Store. I haven't really seen anything about when this is coming out. If anyone has any information about this, please throw it into the chat. First of all, why am I excited about this? I mean, for myself, I don't really care. I have a Mac computer. I don't mind plugging in my Mac computer to an iPad in order to supervise it, or put it into Apple Business Manager. However, a lot of times when I'm working with clients, or I do Jumpstart training as well, and I'm training people on how to use Jamf for the first time. A lot of people managing iOS don't have a Mac computer. So if they need to, reset a device that happens to be in a state that they can't deal with, or if they want to put it into Apple School Manager or Apple Business Manager, it's kind of a tough conversation where it's like, hey, well, you have to buy a Mac. I've also had situations where we'll have clients that have multiple locations across the country or even across the world. And they might only have like 10 iPads in each location, and they have over 100 locations. It would be very expensive to buy a Mac for each one of those locations and also train people on how to use Apple Configurator. So instead, they'll have to send it back to corporate in order to do that, which is also a costly thing. So once Apple Configurator 2 does come out for iOS, they'll make that whole process a lot smoother and a lot easier. And you can kind of have anyone reset an iPad or add it to Apple School Manager or Apple Business Manager if you needed to. So really excited for that to come out. Don't know when that's going to happen, but I know it's not here now. And here's the biggest thing: what breaks? And this is always the biggest question with every OS. With Big Sur, there was a lot of stuff that was broken. Some of our clients' computers that we're working with just completely bricked because of, a kernel extension within CrowdStrike. With Catalina, there was a transition from 32 to 64-bit apps. And although people should have been upgrading their apps to 64-bit, a lot of vendors weren't, and there was a lot of applications that just didn't work. I know people still, they're stuck on Mojave because of that. So what breaks with Monterey? Well, we've been testing, and honestly, we haven't really seen anything. Now, I will say something I know is going to break is Python. We all knew this was coming. Python 2 has been officially sunset, and it will work, but it's going to prompt the user for interactivity when it's used. So if you're trying to use Python scripts or anything, move over to Bash. Python's not going to continue to work, and it's going to be annoying in this operating system. Besides that, though, we haven't really run into any issues. Thanks for watching, everyone. I did want to point out that a good amount of this content came from this JNUC presentation, which is a really good one from Mike Boylan, who's a senior consulting engineer from Apple. So if you want some more information about that, check it out. Also with my own internal testing and just kind of seeing how things actually worked once I delve into it.